He told me not to worry about her. Said she was just his childhood friend. And I believed him. Because nothing about it looked wrong. But the way he looked at her sometimes, that wasn't something you could explain away. Hi, this is Breakup Diaries. This story was shared anonymously. And it's about the kind of situation that doesn't feel like betrayal at first. It feels small, harmless, like something you shouldn't question. When I first met her, everything seemed normal. She was friendly, comfortable around him in a way that made sense. They had history, inside jokes I didn't understand, stories that existed long before I did. And I told myself that was okay. Because everyone has a past. Everyone has people who knew them before you. And if you're secure enough, that shouldn't bother you. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. He didn't hide her. Didn't act suspicious. If anything, he was open about it. She's like family, he said once. And I nodded. Because that sounded reasonable. Safe, even. But there were moments. Small ones I couldn't quite explain. The way their conversations flowed so easily. The way he paid attention to her without even thinking about it. The way I sometimes felt like I was watching something, instead of being part of it. Not excluded. Just slightly outside. And I hated that feeling. Because it made me question something I didn't want to question. Something that didn't have proof. Just a feeling. So I ignored it. Told myself I was overthinking. That there was nothing there. That it was all in my head. But deep down, there was a quiet voice telling me otherwise. At first, it was easy to ignore. Because nothing he did felt wrong enough to question. That's what made it so confusing. It wasn't obvious. It was subtle. The kind of thing you only notice when you start paying attention. They texted a lot. More than I expected. But every time I brought it up, he had an explanation. We've always been close, he said. And I wanted to be the kind of person who understood that. The kind of girlfriend who didn't feel threatened by history. So I let it go. But then there were moments that didn't sit right. Like the way he would respond to her messages immediately. Even when he took hours to reply to mine. Or how his tone changed slightly when he talked about her. Softer. More attentive. Like he was more present somehow. And I noticed it. Even when I tried not to. There were times we'd be together, and his phone would light up. Her name. Every time. And he never ignored it. Not once. I told myself it didn't mean anything. That I was reading too much into it. Because technically, nothing was happening. No lines were crossed. No rules were broken. Just small things. Small enough to dismiss. But not small enough to ignore completely. And the more I noticed them, the harder it became to pretend they didn't exist. It wasn't what he was doing. It was how it made me feel. Like I was slowly becoming second. Without anything clearly replacing me. And that was the part I couldn't explain. If you've ever felt something like this, tell me in the comments. Because I need to know. Was I overthinking? Or was I starting to see the truth? Once you start noticing something, it's hard to stop. Even when you want to. Even when you tell yourself you're being irrational. That's where I was. Caught between what I felt and what I could actually prove. Because logically, everything still made sense. He was still there. Still consistent. Still showing up the way he always had. But emotionally, something felt different. And I couldn't explain why. I started paying more attention. Not in an obsessive way. Just enough to understand what I was feeling. And the more I watched, the more I realized something uncomfortable. It wasn't just their history. It was their connection. The way they understood each other without trying. The way conversations between them never felt forced. The way he looked at her sometimes. Like there was something deeper there. Something unspoken. And I hated that I noticed it. Because once I did, I couldn't unsee it. I started comparing myself without meaning to. Wondering if I was missing something. If I wasn't enough in a way I didn't understand. And that thought alone made me feel small. Because I had never questioned myself like that before. Not in this relationship. Not with him. But now, it felt like I was standing next to something I couldn't compete with. Not because she was better, but because she was already part of him in a way I was. And that realization didn't come all at once. It built slowly, quietly, until one moment made everything impossible to ignore. It didn't happen the way you'd expect. There was no obvious betrayal. No dramatic scene. Just a moment. A small, quiet moment that changed everything. We were all together. Nothing unusual. Just another normal day. They were talking like they always did. Comfortable. Effortless. Like they existed in their own space. And I was there too. But not really part of it. Then it happened. Something small. Easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. She said something. I don't even remember what. But the way he reacted. That's what stayed with me. He looked at her. Not casually. Not the way you look at a friend. But with something softer. Something deeper. Something that didn't belong in a just friends category. And for a second, everything else faded. Because I wasn't imagining it anymore. I saw it. Clear as day. Not physical. Not obvious. But undeniable. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Because I realized something I had been avoiding. This wasn't about insecurity. This wasn't about overthinking. This was real. I didn't say anything right away. I just sat there. Watching. Processing. Trying to understand what I had just seen. But deep down, I already knew. That wasn't friendship. And whatever it was, it didn't leave room for me the way I thought it did. I didn't confront him immediately. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed to be sure. Needed to understand what I was feeling before I said it out loud. But once you see something like that, you can't pretend you didn't. So eventually I asked, carefully, calmly, do you think there's something more between you and her? He didn't hesitate. No. Too quickly. Too easily. Like the answer had been prepared long before the question. She's just my friend, he added. The same line. The same reassurance. But this time, it didn't land the same way. Because now I had something I couldn't ignore. I saw the way you looked at her, I said. And for a second, something shifted in his expression. Not guilt, but recognition. Like he knew exactly what I meant. Even if he wasn't going to admit it. You're overthinking, he said. And there it was. The dismissal. The way my feelings were reduced to something irrational. Something imagined. But it didn't feel imagined anymore. It felt clear. Painfully clear. Because this wasn't about him choosing her physically. It was about something deeper. Something emotional. Something he either couldn't see or refused to acknowledge. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't fighting another person. I was fighting something that already existed long before me. Something I was never going to replace. And for the first time, I realized what that meant. After that conversation, something inside me settled. Not in a comforting way, but in a way that felt final. Because for the first time, I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't questioning myself. I wasn't wondering if I was overthinking. I knew what I had seen. And more importantly, I knew how it made me feel. He didn't change after that. Still talked to her the same way. Still acted like everything between us was normal. Like the conversation we had didn't mean anything. And maybe, to him, it didn't. But to me, it changed everything. Because I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit before. I didn't feel chosen. Not fully. Not in the way you're supposed to feel in a relationship. And that feeling doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from what someone shows you. Even when they don't say it out loud. I didn't need him to confess anything. I didn't need proof beyond what I already felt. Because sometimes, the truth isn't in what someone admits. It's in what they consistently show you. I can't keep feeling like this, I told him. He looked confused. Like he didn't understand why it was such a big deal. And maybe that was the biggest answer of all. Because if he couldn't see it, he was never going to fix it. So I walked away. Not because he cheated. Not because he chose her in an obvious way. But because he never truly chose me. In the way that mattered. And even now, I still think about it sometimes. Not about him, but about that feeling. The quiet realization that changed everything. And I wonder, would you stay with someone who says it's nothing, even when it feels like everything?